Zara Th had lived for 300 cycles, traveled across 17 star systems, and encountered dozens of species. Yet nothing had prepared her for the peculiar creatures called humans. Her crystalline skin shimmered with curiosity as she observed the newest additions to the Galactic Council's database from her research station orbiting Earth. The blue-green planet below looked deceptively peaceful. According to the preliminary reports, humans had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel and were considered a developing species by galactic standards. Most developing species were fragile, cautious creatures who had survived through hiding, camouflage, or advanced technology that compensated for their physical limitations. Humans appeared to fit none of these categories. Dr. Marcus Chen was the first human Zara Th encountered in person. He had volunteered for the cultural exchange program, arriving at her station aboard a primitive but functional spacecraft that the humans had somehow managed to build in just 50 Earth years since their first spaceflight. Most species took millennia to achieve interstellar travel. "Welcome aboard," Zara Th said, her translator converting her melodic tones into what she hoped was comprehensible English. "I am researcher Zara Th of the Veltar Collective. I have been assigned to study your species." Marcus smiled, an expression that Zara Th found both fascinating and slightly unsettling. Humans showed their teeth when pleased, which seemed counterintuitive to most galactic species. "Thank you for having me. I'm Dr. Chen, but please call me Marcus. I'm excited to learn about your people too." Excited. Zara Th made a note. Humans expressed positive emotions about unknown situations. Most intelligent species approached the unknown with careful analysis and measured responses. Humans seemed to feel something they called excitement. Over the following days, Zara Th conducted standard tests to establish baseline measurements of human capabilities. The results were confusing. "Marcus," she said during their third meeting, "I need you to perform some physical assessments. Please step onto this platform." The gravity simulator activated, gradually increasing the gravitational pull. Most species could handle roughly 1.2 times their home world's gravity before showing signs of distress. Humans evolved on a planet with relatively high gravity for a habitable world, so Zara Th expected Marcus to perform similarly to other high-gravity species. At 1.5 times Earth gravity, Marcus was still walking normally. At 2.0 times, he was breathing harder but continued moving. At 2.5 times, he was sweating but remained upright and functional. "How are you feeling?" Zara Th asked, her voice tight with disbelief. "Heavy," Marcus grunted, "but manageable." "How much higher does this go?" Zara Th stared at her readings. No species in the galactic database could function at 2.5 times their home gravity. She increased it to 3.0. Marcus dropped to one knee, breathing heavily, but when Zara Th moved to stop the test, he held up a hand. "Give me a moment." After 30 seconds of controlled breathing, he stood back up. "Okay, I think I can handle a bit more if needed." The test ended at 3.2 times Earth gravity, when Marcus finally admitted he was approaching his limits. Zara Th sat in stunned silence for several minutes after returning the gravity to normal. "Is something wrong?" Marcus asked, stretching casually as if he hadn't just performed what should have been impossible. "No," Zara Th lied. "Let's move to the next assessment." The endurance test proved equally bewildering. The standard protocol involved measuring how long a being could maintain physical activity before requiring rest. Most species could sustain moderate exertion for 20 to 30 minutes before needing significant recovery time. Marcus ran on the treadmill for 2 hours before Zara Th stopped the test, not because he was failing, but because her equipment wasn't designed for such extended use. He was still breathing steadily, still maintaining conversation, still showing no signs of the exhaustion that should have incapacitated him after the first hour. "Don't humans get tired?" Zara Th asked weakly. "Of course we do," Marcus replied, toweling sweat from his forehead. "This is just a light jog for me. I usually run longer distances back home. Some humans run for days without stopping." Days. Zara Th's crystalline features flickered with confusion. She had assumed he was exaggerating, using some sort of metaphorical language. But her research into human databases suggested he was being literal. The psychological evaluations revealed even more disturbing patterns. Zara Th presented Marcus with a series of scenarios designed to test stress responses and decision-making under pressure. "You are trapped in a damaged spacecraft," she explained, "with limited oxygen and no immediate rescue available. What is your primary response?" "Fix the spacecraft," Marcus answered immediately. "The damage is beyond your technical knowledge to repair. Find another way. Use parts from other systems. Try to signal for help while working on the problem. Your oxygen will run out before rescue arrives, and your actions might damage the ship further, making rescue more difficult. Then, I'll work faster and take calculated risks. If I'm going to die anyway, might as well try something." Zara Th paused the simulation. Every other species had given some variation of accept the situation and wait calmly for rescue or death. The concept of deliberately taking risks to avoid certain doom seemed unique to humans. She tried another scenario. You encounter a hostile alien species that significantly outpowers your technology and numbers. Their intentions are clearly aggressive. Analyze their weaknesses, form alliances with other species, develop new strategies or technologies to level the playing field. But the logical response is to retreat or surrender to preserve your people. Marcus looked puzzled. Why would that be logical? If they're hostile, retreat just gives them time to prepare and follow. Surrender means accepting whatever they want to do to us. Fighting gives us a chance to determine our own fate. Even against impossible odds? Especially against impossible odds. That's when fighting matters most. Zara Th's research notes grew longer each day, filled with observations that contradicted everything she knew about intelligent species development. Humans didn't just survive in their environment, they actively sought out challenges. They didn't just solve problems, they created new ones to solve for entertainment. They didn't just adapt to their world, they changed their world to suit their needs. But the truly shocking discovery came when Marcus casually mentioned his daughter's school project. "She's building a volcano that actually erupts," he said proudly. "It's for her science class. The kids love it when things explode safely." "Your young are exposed to explosive materials?" Zara Th's translator barely conveyed her horror. "Well, it's just baking soda and vinegar, but yes. Human children learn by experimenting. We encourage them to take things apart, build new things, try potentially dangerous activities under supervision. It's how they develop problem-solving skills." Zara Th spent the night reviewing educational protocols across known species. Every single other intelligent race kept their young in carefully controlled environments, protecting them from any possible harm until they reached maturity. The idea of deliberately exposing developing minds to risk was unthinkable. "Marcus," she said the next day, "how do human children survive to adulthood?" "Most of them do just fine," he replied. "We lose some to accidents, unfortunately, but the majority learn to assess risks and make smart decisions because they've been practicing since they were small." "But surely your instincts drive you to protect your young from all danger?" "Of course we protect them. But we also teach them to protect themselves. A child who never faces any challenges won't know how to handle real danger when it inevitably comes." The word inevitably stuck in Zara Th's mind. Humans expected danger as a normal part of existence. Most species worked to eliminate danger from their lives entirely. As the days passed, Marcus shared more stories about human behavior that left Zara Th increasingly bewildered. Humans engaged in recreational activities that other species would consider life-threatening. They called it extreme sports. They deliberately jumped from high places with only fabric to slow their descent. They raced vehicles at speeds that could kill them instantly if something went wrong. They climbed sheer rock faces for no practical reason except personal satisfaction. Why do humans seek out dangerous experiences? Zara Th asked. Because it makes us feel alive, Marcus explained. When you push yourself to your limits, when you overcome something that scares you, there's this incredible rush of accomplishment. It builds confidence and teaches you that you're capable of more than you thought. But you could die. Everything involves risk. Walking across a room could result in falling and hitting your head. The question isn't whether something is risky, but whether the risk is worth the potential reward.
Zara Th realized she was documenting something unprecedented.
Every other species in the galactic community had evolved survival instincts that prioritized safety and caution. Humans had somehow evolved survival instincts that prioritized growth and adaptation, even when that meant accepting significant dangers.
The breakthrough came during their discussion of human history.
Marcus was explaining various wars and conflicts when Zara Th noticed a pattern. "Your species has fought thousands of wars against itself," she observed.
"Unfortunately, yes.
But you're also the species that ended those wars through negotiation, cultural change, and mutual cooperation."
"Well, we're not perfect,
but we try to learn from our mistakes." "Marcus, in every conflict you've described, humans eventually chose peace over continued violence, even when violence might have been more immediately advantageous."
"You've repeatedly chosen cooperation with former enemies."
"Of course.
Fighting is sometimes necessary, but it's never the end goal.
The goal is always to reach a point where fighting isn't necessary anymore."
Zara Th's mind raced.
Humans were simultaneously the most aggressive species she had ever encountered and the most committed to peaceful resolution. They prepared for war more thoroughly than any other species, but they also worked harder than any other species to prevent war from being necessary. On Marcus's final day at the station, Zara Th shared her preliminary observations.
"I believe humans represent something entirely new in galactic civilization," she told him.
"Most species achieve peace through avoidance of conflict. You achieve peace through mastery of conflict."
"Most species develop technology to eliminate challenges from their environment.
You develop technology to take on greater challenges."
"Is that bad?" Marcus asked.
"I don't know yet," Zara Th admitted. "But I think the galaxy is about to change in ways we never expected." As Marcus's ship departed for Earth, Zara Th began compiling her full report. But she realized she needed to see more. Her preliminary observations suggested that humans might possess capabilities that could revolutionize galactic civilization, but she needed to understand the scope of human potential. She submitted a request to the Galactic Council for extended observation privileges. There were questions that could only be answered by watching humans in their natural environment, facing challenges that would test the limits of their unusual abilities.
The response came back within days: approved.
The council was as curious as she was about these strange creatures who seemed to defy every established pattern of intelligent life. Zara Th prepared for the journey to Earth, wondering what other impossible things humans might prove capable of. Her research had only scratched the surface, and she suspected that the most shocking discoveries were still ahead. The humans themselves had a saying that Marcus had shared: "Expect the unexpected." Zara Th was beginning to understand that when it came to humans, even that might not be preparation enough. Zara Th's ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, and she experienced her first real taste of human unpredictability. Instead of landing at the designated diplomatic facility, her navigation system detected what appeared to be a massive emergency in progress.
Multiple aircraft were converging on a location several hundred kilometers from her planned destination.
Her communication array picked up frantic transmissions in dozens of human languages, all being translated simultaneously by increasingly sophisticated relay systems. The humans had somehow developed real-time universal translation for their own species, something that had taken the Galactic Council millennia to achieve.
"Unknown alien vessel, this is Houston Control," came a clear transmission. "We're tracking your approach. Are you Dr. Zara Th's expedition?"
"Yes," she responded, surprised by the immediate contact. "I was scheduled to land at the diplomatic complex, but I'm detecting what appears to be a crisis situation."
"Negative on the crisis," the human voice replied. "That's a search and rescue operation.
We had a mountain climbing accident, and teams are mobilizing to help. You're welcome to observe if you're interested."
"Your friend Dr. Shin said you were studying human behavior."
Zara Th adjusted her course toward the coordinates, fascinated despite herself. A climbing accident meant humans were once again engaging in the dangerous recreational activities she had learned about.
But the response to this accident might prove illuminating.
She landed her ship on a flat area designated by ground control and emerged to find herself in the middle of the most organized chaos she had ever witnessed. Hundreds of humans were moving with purpose across a temporary base camp, coordinating vehicles, equipment, and personnel with an efficiency that rivaled military operations. Dr. Zara Th. Marcus appeared beside her, wearing heavy clothing and carrying equipment she didn't recognize.
Perfect timing.
We've got 3 climbers stranded on Mount McKinley, and weather conditions are deteriorating rapidly.
Want to see how humans handle impossible situations?
Before she could respond, Marcus was leading her toward a group of humans gathered around multiple displays showing satellite feeds, weather data, and topographical maps. The missing climbers were trapped at an elevation where most species would never survive, facing temperatures that should have killed them hours ago, in winds that would ground most aircraft.
The helicopter can't reach them, one human was saying.
Wind speeds are over 90 knots at that altitude, and visibility is near zero.
What about the high-altitude rescue team? Another asked.
They're gearing up, but the weather window keeps shifting.
We might have 6 hours, we might have 20 minutes.
Zara Th watched, expecting the humans to acknowledge the impossibility of the situation and begin planning for recovery of remains rather than rescue. Instead, they began developing multiple simultaneous approaches to the problem. Team 1 focused on weather prediction, using supercomputers to model atmospheric conditions and identify potential windows for aircraft operations. Team 2 prepared high-altitude climbers who would ascend the mountain on foot, carrying equipment that would let them survive in conditions that killed most Earth lifeforms. Team 3 modified aircraft with additional survival gear and backup systems, preparing for rescue attempts that pushed the boundaries of their technology's capabilities. Team 4 surprised Zara Th the most. They were developing entirely new solutions in real time.
What if we use the thermal lance to cut a cave into the ice? One human suggested. Give them better shelter while we work out extraction. Helicopter can't get close enough to deploy it, another replied. But what about the cargo drone?
It's rated for high winds.
Not that high, and not with that much weight. So we modify it. Strip out everything non-essential, add more power, design a release mechanism that works in zero visibility.
Zara Th watched them redesign and rebuild technology on the spot, creating new solutions for problems they had never encountered before. Within 2 hours, they had developed 3 different versions of an autonomous drone capable of delivering survival equipment in conditions that would destroy most spacecraft. But the most shocking moment came when the first rescue attempt failed. The modified helicopter had attempted to reach the stranded climbers, but wind conditions forced it back after getting within a few hundred meters of its target. The pilot's report was grim: the climbers were barely visible in the storm, and their shelter was being systematically destroyed by the weather. Zara Th expected the humans to accept the failure and focus on the remaining options. Instead, she heard something she had never encountered in any other species.
"I can get closer," the pilot said over the radio. "I need to try a different approach."
"Negative," came the response from ground control.
"Conditions are beyond operational parameters. Return to base."
"Those people are going to die if we don't reach them in the next hour," the pilot replied.
"I can do this. The risk is unacceptable. The risk of doing nothing is worse."
Zara Th watched the humans debate something that should have been a simple command structure issue. The logical decision was clear: one pilot's life should not be risked for 3 climbers' lives when the probability of success was minimal. But humans, she was learning, did not always follow logic. Marcus noticed her confusion. "The pilot is volunteering," he explained. "In human culture, people can choose to accept personal risk to help others, even when the odds are bad."
"That's irrational," Zara Th said. "Maybe.
But 3 families are waiting to find out if their loved ones come home alive. Jenny, the pilot, knows she might be their only chance."
The conversation continued for several minutes before ground control authorized a second attempt.
The pilot would try a different approach, using terrain features to shield her aircraft from the worst winds while attempting to get close enough to deploy rescue equipment. Zara Th monitored the attempt through multiple data feeds, watching aircraft telemetry that showed stresses approaching mechanical limits. The pilot was flying manually, making constant adjustments to account for wind shears that would have overwhelmed automated systems. And then, impossibly, it worked. The helicopter managed to hover just long enough to deploy a rescue capsule containing emergency shelter, heating elements, communication equipment, and enough supplies to keep the climbers alive for several more hours. The aircraft took severe damage from the conditions, but the pilot managed to return it safely to base.
Now what?
Zara Th asked. Now we get them down, Marcus replied.
The actual rescue took another 6 hours.
The high-altitude team reached the stranded climbers, established secure anchor points, and began a technical evacuation that required moving people down a vertical ice face in near-zero visibility while wind speeds fluctuated between dangerous and impossible. Zara Th watched humans make decisions that prioritized the lives of strangers over their own safety, repeatedly and without hesitation. She watched them solve technical problems in real time under extreme pressure, creating new procedures and adapting existing ones when circumstances changed faster than their planning could accommodate. But, most shocking of all, she watched them succeed.
All 3 climbers were brought down safely.
The rescue teams returned without serious injuries. The equipment that had been modified or jury-rigged in the field continued functioning throughout the operation. As the rescue concluded and teams began packing equipment, Marcus found Zara Th staring at her data collection devices.
"Everything okay?" he asked.
"I need to understand something," she said.
The probability of success for that rescue was extremely low.
The risks were enormous. The logical decision would have been to wait for better conditions or acknowledge that the situation was unsurvivable.
Maybe, Marcus agreed. But humans attempted the rescue anyway. Multiple humans volunteered for personal risk to help strangers.
You modify technology beyond its rated specifications and operated it in conditions that could have resulted in additional casualties.
Yes. And it worked. This time it worked. Sometimes it doesn't.
But we still try. Zara Th reviewed her recordings of the event, analyzing human behavior patterns that seemed to contradict every principle of logical risk assessment. And yet the outcomes spoke for themselves. Over the following weeks, she observed similar patterns repeatedly.
Humans routinely attempted tasks that other species would consider impossible, and they succeeded at a rate that defied statistical probability.
She watched engineers solve technical problems by building solutions that shouldn't have worked according to established principles, but did work because humans were willing to test theories that other species considered too risky to attempt. She observed medical teams saving patients by trying experimental treatments that had minimal theoretical support but offered the only chance for survival when conventional approaches failed. She documented educators teaching young humans to think independently and question established knowledge, rather than simply memorizing correct information. Human children were actively encouraged to disagree with authority figures and develop their own ideas, something that would have horrified most species.
The pattern was consistent: humans achieved impossible results by attempting impossible things.
But the most significant discovery came when Zara Th witnessed her first human response to galactic contact. The Galactic Council had authorized limited disclosure of alien contact to Earth's government leaders, expecting the standard response of cautious diplomatic overtures and careful cultural exchange protocols.
Most species required decades of gradual introduction to galactic civilization before they were ready for meaningful participation. Humans had a different approach. Within hours of learning about galactic civilization, human scientists were submitting theoretical papers about faster-than-light communication improvements. Human engineers were proposing modifications to galactic standard spacecraft designs. Human philosophers were writing treatises on interspecies ethics that addressed problems the Galactic Council had never considered.
Most shocking of all, humans immediately began planning their own independent exploration missions to other star systems.
"We're grateful for the contact,"
the human diplomatic representative told the Council during the first formal meeting.
"We look forward to learning from your experiences and contributing to galactic civilization. When can we send our own ships to visit your worlds?"
The question stunned the Council representatives. New species typically spent centuries as junior participants in galactic affairs before considering independent interstellar operations.
"That's a very advanced step," the Council representative replied carefully. perhaps after a few decades of cultural exchange and technological development.
We're thinking more like next year, the human replied cheerfully. We've already identified 3 star systems we'd like to visit, and our engineers believe they can build ships capable of making the journey safely.
Zara-TH watched the council representatives struggle to process this information.
Humans had been aware of galactic civilization for less than a week, and they were already making plans to become active participants rather than passive recipients of advanced knowledge. That night, Zara-TH completed her preliminary report to the council, but she knew her observations had barely scratched the surface of human capabilities. Every day revealed new aspects of human behavior that challenged fundamental assumptions about intelligent life. Humans didn't just adapt to challenges, they sought out challenges specifically to grow stronger. They didn't just solve problems, they anticipated problems that didn't exist yet and developed solutions in advance. They didn't just survive in their environment, they actively reshaped their environment and, then, created new challenges to overcome.
And now they were preparing to do the same thing to the galaxy. Zara-TH realized that her research had uncovered something unprecedented. Humans represented a form of intelligent life that might change the very nature of galactic civilization.
But she still needed to understand the full scope of human potential, and that would require observing them as they encountered challenges unlike anything they had faced before. She submitted a request for extended research protocols, knowing that the most important discoveries lay ahead. The galaxy was about to meet humanity properly, and Zara-TH suspected that nothing would ever be quite the same afterward.
The crisis began 3 months after humanity's official introduction to galactic civilization.
Zara-TH was aboard the human research vessel Endeavour, documenting their first independent interstellar mission, when the emergency transmission reached them from the Kepler 442 system. The message was fragmented and desperate: massive system failure, life support compromised, 17 million inhabitants. Galactic Council rescue fleet 7 days out, population will not survive. The transmission came from HFY Prime, a heavily populated world of the Thylaxi species, known throughout the galaxy for their advanced biotechnology and peaceful nature. Something had gone catastrophically wrong with their planetary atmosphere processors, and their entire civilization was facing extinction within days. The Galactic Council had immediately dispatched their fastest rescue ships, but, even pushing beyond safe operational limits, they would arrive too late. 17 million beings were going to die, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. That was when Captain Sarah Chen, Dr. Marcus Chen's daughter, made an announcement that left Zara-TH speechless.
All hands, this is the captain. We've received a distress call from HFY Prime.
Council rescue forces are 7 days out.
We're 2 days out. We're going to help.
The human crew responded with immediate activity, but Zara-TH felt compelled to point out the obvious problems. Captain Chen, she said, her crystalline features flickering with concern, the Endeavour is a research vessel, not a rescue ship.
You have a crew of 47. HFY Prime has 17 million inhabitants facing atmospheric collapse. Mathematically, there is nothing you can accomplish.
Maybe, Captain Chen replied calmly. But 17 million people are going to die if we don't try.
So we're going to try.
The next 36 hours revealed everything Zara-TH had been trying to understand about human nature. The Endeavour's crew immediately began developing multiple approaches to an impossible problem. They contacted Earth for technical support, bringing human expertise from across their planet into the discussion. They reached out to other human ships in the area, coordinating with vessels that weren't designed for rescue operations but might contribute resources or capabilities. But, most importantly, they began thinking about the problem in ways that no other species ever had. The atmospheric processors are failing, reported Dr. Kim Patel, the ship's environmental systems specialist.
The Thylaxi designed them for efficiency and sustainability, not emergency repair.
The standard approach would be to shut down the failing systems and replace them completely.
How long would that take? Captain Chen asked. For 17 million people?
Even with a proper rescue fleet, probably weeks. They'll be dead in days.
So we don't replace the systems, interrupted Engineer Rodriguez. We bypass them.
Give them temporary life support while the rescue fleet handles the permanent solution.
Zara-TH listened as the humans began developing a plan that would have been rejected by any other species as impossibly dangerous. Instead of attempting to fix the atmospheric processors, they were going to create a temporary artificial atmosphere using the Endeavour's own life support systems, supplemented by modifications that pushed their equipment far beyond safe operational parameters. The plan required them to enter Zirion Prime's atmosphere with a research vessel never designed for planetary operations, deploy improvised environmental support systems across an entire planet, and maintain those systems for days while operating with minimal safety margins. The risk of catastrophic failure is approximately 73%, Zara-TH informed them after running the calculations. "What are the odds if we do nothing?" Captain Chen asked. 100%, Zara-TH admitted. Then, 27% is infinitely better than 0%. The approach to Zirion Prime pushed the Endeavour beyond every design limit. The ship's hull groaned under atmospheric pressures it was never meant to handle. Environmental systems operated at 150% of rated capacity, maintained by engineering crews who worked in shifts around the clock. But, the humans had one advantage that Zara-TH was only beginning to appreciate: they excelled at cooperation under pressure. The crew worked with a coordination that seemed almost telepathic. When one system failed, another crew member was already implementing a backup solution. When equipment broke, engineers repaired or rebuilt it using whatever materials they could find. When the original plan proved insufficient, they adapted in real time, developing new approaches faster than Zara-TH could analyze them. The first day on Zirion Prime was chaos. The Endeavour deployed atmospheric support stations across 12 major population centers, each one a jury-rigged combination of human technology and improvised solutions. The stations provided breathable air for roughly 3 million Thylaxi, leaving 14 million still at risk. That was when the human crew did something unprecedented. They contacted every human ship within 50 light-years and asked for volunteers. The response overwhelmed even Zara-TH's ability to process. Trading vessels diverted from profitable routes to deliver supplies. Research ships abandoned their missions to provide technical support. Even human military vessels, officially forbidden from operating in that sector, somehow experienced navigation errors that brought them to Zirion Prime. Within 18 hours, 47 human ships had arrived in the system. None of them were designed for large-scale rescue operations. Together, they created a rescue fleet that shouldn't have existed. Zara-TH watched humans coordinate a multi-ship operation using communication protocols they invented on the spot. She observed them sharing resources between vessels that had never worked together before. She documented them modifying incompatible technologies to work in harmony, solving engineering problems that required expertise no single ship possessed. The second day brought new challenges. The improvised atmospheric systems were working, but they required constant maintenance and consumed supplies faster than anticipated. Several stations had already suffered partial failures, forcing evacuations to areas with better life support coverage. That was when the humans demonstrated their most incomprehensible ability. They adapted the problem to match their solution. Instead of trying to maintain 17 million Thylaxi in their existing locations, the humans began relocating entire populations to areas where their life support systems worked most efficiently. They transformed the rescue operation into a massive, voluntary migration, moving millions of beings to temporary cities that could sustain them with available resources. The operation required logistics coordination beyond anything in galactic history. Humans organized transport for beings whose biology they barely understood, to locations that hadn't existed days earlier, using equipment that was never designed for any of those purposes. And it worked. By the third day, all 17 million Thylaxi were breathing safely in human-maintained environments. The improvised cities functioned despite being built from salvaged materials and operated by species that had never worked together before. The atmospheric support systems held together through constant maintenance, creative repairs, and what humans called optimistic engineering. When the Galactic Council rescue fleet finally arrived, they found Zirion Prime's entire population alive, healthy, and living in temporary communities that had become models of interspecies cooperation. The Council's fleet commander, a Veltar like Zara-TH, contacted the Endeavour with a message that summed up galactic civilization's confusion. How did you accomplish this with insufficient ships, inadequate equipment, and no proper planning time?
Captain Chen's response became legendary among human spacers. We decided that insufficient and inadequate were just starting points. But, for Zara-TH, the real revelation came during the aftermath of the rescue. The Galactic Council had arrived prepared to begin a complex operation to restore Zirion Prime's atmospheric systems and resettle its population. The process would have taken months and required massive resource allocation from multiple member species. The humans had a different suggestion. Why restore the old systems? Dr. Patel asked during the joint planning meeting. They failed catastrophically and nearly killed everyone. Why not build better ones? The suggestion sparked days of debate. The Thylaxi atmospheric processors had been considered state-of-the-art technology, designed by specialists with centuries of experience. The idea of replacing them with systems designed by humans who had known about the Thylaxi for less than a week seemed absurd. But, the humans presented their proposal with characteristic confidence. They had analyzed the failure patterns of the original systems and identified fundamental design flaws that made catastrophic breakdown inevitable over time. Their proposed replacement systems would be more robust, more maintainable, and better adapted to Zirion Prime's specific environmental conditions. The new systems would also be compatible with human-designed backup systems, ensuring that any future failures could be addressed quickly by the growing human presence in that sector of the galaxy. You're suggesting that we replace technology developed over centuries by specialists with designs created in days by generalists, the council engineer said skeptically. We're suggesting that you replace technology that failed with technology that works, Captain Chen replied. The specialists did excellent work, but they designed for normal operations. We designed for everything going wrong at the worst possible moment. The debate continued for weeks, but, eventually, the evidence spoke for itself. Human systems had kept 17 million beings alive under impossible conditions. Thylaxi systems had nearly killed them under normal operations. Zirion Prime became the first galactic world to implement human-designed infrastructure, setting a precedent that would reshape galactic civilization. But, for Zara-TH, the most important discovery came from her conversations with the Thylaxi refugees during the crisis. Your species saved our entire civilization, Elder Thymos told her, but that's not what amazes us most. What amazes you? Zara-TH asked. They never questioned whether they should try. When they learned about our situation, they immediately began working on solutions. There was no debate about whether the risk was acceptable, no analysis of cost versus benefit. They simply decided that we mattered, and everything else followed from that decision. Zara-TH realized that she had discovered the core principle that drove human behavior. Other species made decisions based on careful analysis of probabilities, resources, and logical outcomes. Humans made decisions based on values, then developed the capabilities needed to support those decisions. The distinction explained everything she had observed. Humans didn't seek out challenges because they enjoyed danger, they sought out challenges because overcoming challenges expanded their ability to help others and protect what they valued. They didn't take impossible risks for excitement, they took calculated risks because achieving the impossible was often the only way to protect what mattered to them. They didn't defy logic, they operated on a different logical framework that prioritized long-term capability development over short-term safety optimization. Her final report to the Galactic Council was the longest single document in Council history. In it, she outlined her conclusion that humanity represented not just a new species, but a fundamentally new approach to intelligent life. Humans, she wrote, are evolution's answer to the question, what if a species developed intelligence specifically to overcome impossible challenges rather than to avoid them? She recommended immediate integration of humanity into the Council as full members rather than junior participants, arguing that galactic civilization needed human capabilities as much as humans needed galactic knowledge. The recommendation was accepted unanimously after the Thylaxi delegation made a simple statement: they saved all of us when saving any of us should have been impossible. What more do you need to know? 6 months later, Zara-TH attended the ceremony welcoming humanity as the newest senior member of the Galactic Council. Captain Chen was there, now serving as Earth's primary diplomatic representative to the galactic community. Any regrets about studying us? Chen asked during the reception. Only one, Zara-TH replied. I wish I had understood sooner that impossible and inadvisable are not the same thing. Took us a while to figure that out too, Chen said with the unsettling human smile that Zara-TH had learned to associate with incoming surprises.
Want to see what we're working on next?
Zara-TH's crystalline features flickered with something that might have been anticipation. Months of observing humans had taught her to expect the unexpected, and she was beginning to understand why humans found that exhilarating rather than terrifying.
Show me, she said.
As they walked toward the display of human achievements, Zara-TH realized that her research had revealed more than just human capabilities. It had revealed the potential for galactic civilization to become something greater than the sum of its parts, something that could tackle challenges that had previously been accepted as inevitable limitations. The galaxy was about to become a very different place, and, for the first time in her long life, Zara-TH found herself looking forward to the impossible becoming possible. After all, she had learned from the best teachers in the universe, humans who had never learned that some things couldn't be done, and who had therefore done them anyway.